Yeah, Daniel. Well, there's a number that I could say. I'd like to say it was just popping up in Perth one time and seeing the Australian submariners loading beer into their boat, and us having been sober for the last month and a half. That wasn't much fun for us. But one of the craziest experiences that I can say that we had is, on a submarine, if you are not going forward, then you could very well be sinking, right? A boat that's just sitting in the water and it's not moving, it doesn't stay afloat. It's not very buoyant. So when you're underwater, you got to be moving forward. Well, in the military, any military, you're running drills all the time. You're always training. We called it grown men playing pretend, but you're playing with really expensive equipment, and there's a lot of things at stake. And of course, you do that so you're ready when the time comes, if a real emergency happens. And one of these times, we were testing out equipment, and sure enough, we shut down the reactors, which means we were losing steam in the headers, and we needed to shift over to emergency propulsion. Well, the guy who was in charge of shifting that thing over didn't get it done properly. And so instead of our boat going on a nice little incline up to the surface where we'd be safe, once you get on the surface, you can fill all the ballast tanks up and you're good. But you got to get to the surface before you can do that so you stay buoyant. And we're going up and going up and going up. And all of a sudden we stopped going up because they didn't get emergency propulsion online. And my job, I was a nub at the time, a non-useful body. So my only job was to make sure that somebody did not operate a valve, that if they did operate, it could cause a lot of problems in the plant. And they said, just no matter what happens, do not let anybody just touch that valve without equalizing pressure first. It's really important. And so here I am just kind of walking around, not really knowing all of what's going on. But there's a depth gauge, and you can see this depth gauge, and all of a sudden we're, a couple hundred feet, and then we're dropping down. But we're still angled up, and you can feel this. So you can actually feel yourself, instead of going like this up to the surface, we're actually sliding backwards down the water. And the longer that happens, the faster you go. So we started going from, a few feet a second to tens of feet per second to all of a sudden we're dropping hundreds of feet in the water. And all of a sudden you hear the engineer come over, the PA system, engineering watch supervisor, emergency restore the engine room. And all of a sudden they're telling me, open that valve, the same one they told me not to touch. Just open the damn valve. And at this point, okay, shit's hitting the fan. We got to do this. So we're slamming this valve open, and sure enough, the steam in the header just starts roaring down the pipes and starts getting the propulsion going again. And luckily, we were able to save everything. We didn't, obviously, I'm here today. We didn't crush the boat, anything like that. But, going down backwards underwater when you're not supposed to be is not a lot of fun. So definitely gives you an appreciation for the minor inconveniences we deal with on a daily basis now, that after having gone through all that.
It's a phenomenal story, and I think it's a metaphor for so many people in business. You can have your eye on the goal, looking forward, and you can also be drifting back from the goal. But you're so optimistic, you're so positive that this is what I'm going for, but you're actually going backwards. And I think in business this happens so often, but people assume because I can see what I want, I must be moving towards it. But they
Right.
could be dropping profits, opportunities, ones, tens, hundreds, every single second. And it comes back to one of the first things that you said there, is that in the Navy, you're always drilling, you're always practicing, you're always preparing. And I believe that in business, we might have our doors open from 9 till 5, but it doesn't mean we're drilling. It doesn't mean we're practicing. We could just be sitting there idling away, burning fuel and doing nothing with that time. And what
Yeah.
I've noticed is that a lot of people who have left the military, not all of them, a lot of them have been successful in business because they've had the discipline to continue that training, constantly refining those skills. And there was one great quote I heard years ago, and it said that professional soldiers pray for peace, but they hope for war. And what that means is that professional soldiers are trained to kill, but nobody likes to necessarily kill anybody. But when the time comes and they have to protect their fellow countrymen, they can do what they do best.
Yeah, they always prepare
And
for war. Exactly.
always prepare. And the same thing in business. We might not have that luxury because it's what we say in Australia, it's grand final day every day. You open that door at 9 a.m. in the morning, you close it at 5, and it's game on. You're going to win or you lose. So through that experience of the boat drifting backwards, what did you take away, and how did that give you a better look on life and in business?
Yeah, well, I mean, it definitely gives you a really great appreciation for just being alive in general. And at the time, you don't think much of it, right? At the time, you are in the moment and you know full well it's just time to work. It's just time to get the job done because there's nothing else you can do. It's not like you're just going to sit around and hope that everything else fixes itself and somebody else takes care of the situation. You get to work. And it also highlights how important it is to know what needs to be done, even without manuals and procedures and everything right there for you. You have to be able to think on your feet and get things going. And so when business owners are working on growing their business, scaling their business, exiting their business, whatever it might be, we get this tendency to get complacent or lazy, and we just think that everybody else is going to handle the situation. Like, okay, I hired this person, they should take care of it now, and that's not the case, right? As a business owner, you're never resting. You are always training. You're always preparing for what that next step is, and you're preparing your team, right? Because at the end of the day, you still can't do everything if you want to grow. You have to impart wisdom and experience to your team, which means you're constantly training as well. And I would say that that was probably one of the biggest lessons I learned in the military in general. I was appalled by how poorly so many businesses were run when I got out, and I was in the job of inspecting businesses. We were an insurance company, so we were in managing their risk and mitigating risk, which meant we would go in and we look at them. We get to see everything from their books to their operating history to their maintenance records to everything. And I was just appalled at how poorly most of these businesses were run. And a lot of folks would say, well, we just fix things when they break, or if they break, we just hire somebody else or contract it out and have them come fix it. And in certain situations, that doesn't really work out in their favor. And I was just kind of blown away by how lackadaisical most people would take running their actual business, the thing that's putting food on the table, not only for them, but also for all their employees too.
Very reactive. Very reactive in business. And I think this also comes from people not understanding the importance of preparation. My grandfather, he was in the Air Force, and all the equipment had to be inspected. If you wanted to go for a drive in the car, all the equipment had to be inspected. You had to check the oil, you had to check the radiator, you had to check the fluid in the washers, you had to check the petrol, you had to check the tyre pressure. And before you went anywhere, he always did his pre-flight checks.
Yeah.
When I was in the aviation industry, we always had pre-flight checks, and we had standard operating procedures that had to be met, and we did them over and over and over again. And the company knew that people would slacken off. So as part of their security measures, they would plant suspicious items on the aircraft. And if the crew didn't find those suspicious items, the aircraft wouldn't be fit to fly, and the crew would possibly be stood down. And that's how important they took it. But when I got into the world of business, I realised nobody's preparing. They think they're ready. They assume they're ready. They've read the book. They've watched the YouTube show, but they've actually never put boots on the ground.
Oh yeah, I mean, everybody likes to talk about that Mike Tyson quote about how everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? And what you just said is so important. You can read the books. You can read. I have bookshelves. I have an entire library of books, not only physical but audio books as well. And it's great. But on the other hand, as soon as something goes south or something doesn't work, just reading the books isn't enough. You have to have the experience, and you have to have the team, and you have to have the ability to move forward. And I think that life lessons are still the greatest teacher, even though we love to learn from others' mistakes, we love to learn from books. Yeah, the fact is that just doing the job is where you're going to get most of your experience.
When I was wakeboarding, it was all about the practice. We would practice for 8 months of the year, and we would compete for 2 or 3 months of the year. And it was always going and riding and doing the trick over and over again. And it was really drilling it down into your muscle memory so that you could get to the point where it didn't matter if you had nerves, if you're anxious or you're excited, your body already knew exactly what to do. And even if you had lost your mindset, then the body had done the same trick over and over and again, and it would just do it on repeat as many times as you needed. And it worked in any condition. And a lot of people in my sport of wakeboarding, they would always train in the perfect conditions. If the lake was smooth, they would ride. If there was rollers on it or chop, they wouldn't ride. But they could only ever perform when the conditions were perfect. But in business, the conditions are never perfect. There's very rarely that perfect storm.
Yeah.
The sun's not always out, the time of the day is not right, the equipment's never ready. And you've got to practice, because mindset is one thing. And this is what a lot of people get confused about, is they say, well, I've got the knowledge. Yes, good. And I've got the
Mhm.
skill. Good. But what have you actually done with it?
Right.
And I love that quote of Mike Tyson too. And I've seen it. One of my friends, he was in a boxing match on the weekend, and he went into the first round, and and the guy, his component, came out swinging and thought he was going to knock him out with one punch. That didn't work. And then by the second round, the other guy was puffed and tired out. And my friend said, "Hey, I'm ready to go. I'm ready for another
Yep.
8 of these." And they called the fight off halfway into the second round. And it was just because he hadn't prepared.
Right.
He wasn't conditioned. He wasn't battle ready.
Yep.
In a business, people get to a stage where they say, I don't want to be a solopreneur anymore. I want to be able to grow the business. When somebody wants to grow the business, what are some of the reasons for failure? Why do businesses fail to scale?
I'd say the number one reason, Michael Gerber writes about it in the E-Myth, which is most people are technicians. Most people love doing the thing. They love the operations aspect. They even some of them love servicing the client or servicing the customer. But there's so much more to business, right? Anybody who's scaled any business, you know that of course, you have your marketing, sales, operations. Those are your three key departments. Well, when you're the entrepreneur, you're wearing all 17 hats, right? You're the CEO, CMO, CEO, CFO, COO, you're the chief cook and bottle washer, right? You're all of those things. Well, if you want to actually grow a business, there's only a few ways to do it to get more money to come in, and that's either you charge more money for every product you get in, you get more customers to come back more often, right? So in order to do that, you need to provide either a higher level of service, a higher value to your client, your customers, or you need to provide more of it. Well, either way, in some capacity, you need to level up your ability to deliver. And most entrepreneurs love the ability of just delivering. Like a lot of the scientists, the innovators, they love to create stuff. The coders, they love to build software. Well, that's great. But somebody needs to manage a sales team. Somebody needs to get the marketing done. Somebody needs to make sure that the customer support is being handled, that the finance is happening, that the taxes are paid. All the licenses are going. The government's not going to come in and shut you down. And so the biggest challenge that I would say most entrepreneurs have when it comes to going from solopreneur to scaling is that they haven't quite figured out where they fit in that ecosystem. And as a result, they haven't figured out how to start scaling up their customer acquisition, their leads, their ability to generate revenue. Some people love the sales process. That's great. If you are the entrepreneur who loves selling, that's amazing, because sometimes that's the hardest thing to outsource. But that means you have to have somebody else who's going to take care of and take ownership of the client delivery, the service delivery. And so it's really figuring out where you fit in that equation, and then as quickly as possible getting out of all those other areas and letting people who are experts in those areas take over. So focusing in on your zone of genius is what's going to allow you to grow.
With a business that fails to scale, what's the problem in the mindset of the business owner?
Yeah, well, there's really a couple ways that somebody can fail to scale, right? The first is you just never actually take off. You never actually sell more stuff. And that's generally a fear, right? It's either a fear or a lack of experience, lack of knowledge. And that lack of experience, lack of knowledge generally relates to, it turns into fear, right? It manifests as fear. And so that fear results in not taking action, not doing the thing that you want to do, right? Everybody says, yeah, I want to make $1 million a year, $1 million a month now, right? Or every week, like at Angel Investors Network, we hear people say, oh, I'm the next unicorn. I'm the next $1 billion company. Great. All right, well, let's raise some money. Let's see how you guys do. And then they come back, oh, yeah, I'm still the next $1 billion company. Well, how much traction have you got? Well, none. Well, why? And when you dive into it, it's because they're actually terrified of doing the things that it's going to take to get there, right? Everybody loves to see the pot at the end of the rainbow, but no one wants to go on the adventure to find it, right? And so that's a big challenge. The second issue when it comes to failing to scale is actually the companies that scale up too quickly, right? So I work in marketing a lot, and we help with go-to-market strategies and growing a business. And we've scaled businesses very, very quickly. And one of the biggest challenges there is that when you get really good at the sales and the marketing piece, if the operations perspective has not caught up and you're not prepared to take on enough clients, you end up failing by growing too fast. And we've seen that happen over and over again, especially companies that get really well funded. They think, oh, great, I got all this money. Let's just go put the pedal to the metal and start growing. And they haven't put in place the infrastructure they need to properly support that new customer growth. And so that's another big issue. So the two ways that people can fail is by not taking the action in the first place, by being afraid, or taking too much of the wrong action, and as a result, not having a sound infrastructure to help support that growth.
A friend of mine years ago, he took a role at a recruiting company and he was doing sales. And his target was around about $400,000 worth of business. And the business made it very clear to him, your target is 400,000, not below, not above, bring in 400,000. That's what we can handle. Now, he was a very good salesperson and he went out and he bought in 600 and then 600 turned into 800 and then 800 turned into 1.2 million. And he was blown away with the amount of business that he could bring in. But the company started to collapse under the weight of that new business. And all of that business that they bought in above 400,000, the business actually couldn't handle the level of sales, they couldn't deliver the service, and they couldn't fulfill the promise. And so everything that he bought over 400,000, they actually lost. And the biggest damage that it did to the business was the damage to their reputation. They couldn't handle the growth. They had to send it all back. And then once they did have the procedures in place to deal with it, all those customers said, we've had a bad experience with you. We're not prepared to give you another shot. And he was great at sales, but the company wasn't ready for it. And that was a shock. And he tells the story, and most people scratch their head going, I would love that. But the reality is they weren't prepared.
Oh, I've lived through that. I've lived the highs and the absolute bottom of the barrel lows as a result of doing that. And so I can speak from same experience. It's miserable when you think that you're bringing the money in and losing it all. And I can't tell you, I don't know which one's worse necessarily, because I've been on both sides of that. The one who's struggling just to get the growth going, that is a long, slow haul. And people that are in that space hate it, right? They keep saying, I wish it would take off. I wish this thing would work. I wish. I'm doing all these things. Why is it not working? And there's very specific reasons why. But being on the other end, like, oh my gosh, man, we're on top of the world. We are crushing it right now. We're making money hand over fist. All of a sudden, gone. Like, that's crushing too. And it's just a different kind of defeat that you feel. And so I can definitely appreciate that.
Those fears that begin to manifest, what are they? Is it the fear of being taken advantage of as you scale and grow and bringing in these new people? I'm outsourcing. Is it the fear of rejection? Is it that we're going to do all of this and go to the marketplace and the marketplace says we don't want what you've got to offer? Is it that fear of leaving the comfort zone? Hey, I've been a consultant for 20 years and now I want to employ, but I'm absolutely afraid to step out and do it? Or is it the fear of making a mistake? What if we go to all of this effort and then we've forgotten one thing and it doesn't work at all? We lose our time, we lose our money, we lose our reputation. What are the fears?
I mean, all of those are legitimate, right? And all of those are there in some case. But what I would say is that the number one thing that we found is actually a hidden fear. And it's a fear that they won't tell themselves. They will not acknowledge the fact that they won't take action on the thing that needs to happen. So if you ask anybody, any business owner that wants to grow, that's been saying they've wanted to grow for a long time, but they haven't gotten there, you're going to ask them, okay, why haven't you? And what you're going to find is they fill their time doing the things that are comfortable, right? Things they know how to do. And it's not even so much that the things that are uncomfortable are scary. It's just that they're uncomfortable. And they get really, really frustrated. So let's say, for example, I'm the kind of guy, I will get on a call any day of the week with anybody. I don't care who it is. But if you ask me to pick up the phone and start cold calling people, that's not good for me. Like, that's not the best place for me to be. If somebody sets an appointment up for me, I'm there. We'll handle it. We'll run it, no problem. But for me to just pick up the phone and start dialing through the yellow pages, that wouldn't happen, right? Give it a reference ravel down there. But one of the things that we see with these entrepreneurs, these business owners, is that it's not necessarily a fear that holds them back. It's this inability to get uncomfortable. and to do that thing. So it's not even necessarily fear. They're not necessarily afraid of rejection. They're not necessarily afraid of not being able to figure it out. They don't take that first step because no one's actually behind them pushing them, saying you need to do this. This is absolutely vital. So if their motivation isn't big enough, they won't get uncomfortable. And that results in them not taking action. And so they get afraid. Now all of a sudden their fear is they get to a certain point in their life, they're like, holy crap, I haven't done anything with my life, or I haven't got what I wanted to. And now I'm going to shy away from it even more because I don't want to look like a failure. So I might even just stop talking about trying to grow. I don't want to look like I have egg on my face or somebody that said I was going to do all these amazing things and then I never did. And so what you see is these younger entrepreneurs are just full of bravado and they're ready to go. And they'll crush it. Like, I mean, it still drives me nuts when you see the teenager, the 20-something that's just crushing it. But they just took action. They didn't have those fears. They didn't have any inhibitions. They just took action. They just made it happen. And they didn't care what other people thought. You start getting to those folks that have been around for a while. Maybe they even left a corporate job and they were on top of the world. Like I was a director inside of a Fortune 100 company. I was mid-level, senior level management, sitting in boardroom calls, dealing with international projects, working with the tops, the heads of really, really big companies. And I left that, and all of a sudden, I'm in this world where I'm kind of a nobody, right? And so there's this sense when you go from that, I'm the big shot, right? Everybody knows who I am, and they know what I'm capable of too. Now I'm in this world where I have to kind of eat what I kill and convince everybody else that I am actually that really good, really that good. They don't have that bravado anymore. And it's kind of topsy-turvy, right? Because the young ones don't have the experience, but they don't have the inhibition either. The folks that already have responsibilities, they have families, they have mortgages, they have mouths to feed, they have people to take care of. They don't want to go out there and start yelling, I'm going to do all these amazing things for fear that they might look foolish, right? That's actually one of the things. So it's pride and ego sometimes get in the way as well.
It's fascinating, isn't it? We can have all of that knowledge, all of that skill, and then the ego gets in the way. And I love what Leonardo DiCaprio said in The Wolf of Wall Street. He said it's the bullshit stories that get in the way. And we do tell ourselves those bullshit stories and we convince ourselves that they're the reality. But for every limitation that we have, every fear, every doubt, every limiting belief, there's somebody out there doing what we want to do. There's always somebody out there earning twice as much. There's another business doing twice as many sales, but we convince ourselves that it's not possible. And I believe that comes with having some good direction. It also comes from having some great advisors on your team to be able to be shown what other people are actually doing. Because I think if we can see it being done, then we don't have to rely on faith. People say they're people of faith, but people of faith, they believe in the invisible. But in business, getting somebody to believe in the invisible is quite tough. But if they can see another business doing it, it gives them at least some more hope.
Well, and here's just a funny corollary of that. The people that have faith, have religious faith or blind faith and anything like that, they are almost abdicating control of their lives to somebody else. So going back to what we were saying earlier, when you're the business owner, you have no one to abdicate to, right? You can't delegate or get rid of all this responsibility without still owning the ownership of it, owning the overview of it, right? So you still have to be responsible for the outcome versus, so you can't just have faith in everybody else figuring out when it's in business, right? In religion, we have faith because we know there's a bigger power. When it's in business, it's like you got to have the faith in yourself, right? And that's really scary for a lot of people.
I think one problem there that I've seen over the years is that business people spend so much time reading books, listening to too many podcasts, listening to too many audio books, and they never act on their own intuitions or their own knowledge. And they learn more, and then the more they learn, the more ignorant they feel. Like, gee, there's got to be something else. But going back to those young ones, ignorance is bliss. Okay, yes. What does it matter? If I fall off the bike, I'm going to scratch my knee. It's not going to be the end of the world. They're not thinking about all the consequences, and that's beautiful when you can get in there and take the action. Because out of the studies of successful people, the cornerstone of success is their ability to take action. Even if you had the worst strategy and take action, you're going to run circles around the person who's got the perfect strategy and never takes action at all.
And
And
there's one little fine point on that too, right? That it's the person who takes the action even after they fail. Because that's one thing I think a lot of people forget is that everyone who's been successful has failed at some point, right? I mean, I haven't met a single person who's just ridden that wave all the way up and has never had a down day, right? And so a lot of people, I think they look at this, through rose-colored glass. They see the people on top of the mountain, and they forget how many times they slid down in that trek up the mountain. And so a lot of people will not even take that next action after they fail or after the first setback. And so that's what makes entrepreneurs just incredible people that actually scale their businesses and go after it.
in the military, they have men and women who shoot mortar rockets. And when they shoot the first mortar, it never hits the target. But they don't give up and quit. They don't say, hey, the rocket didn't hit the target, I'm giving up. They plan for that. They say the first mortar we shoot is going to go beyond the target. But what they do is they measure and they calculate. They say, okay, well, where did it land? They then adjust the mortar, and then they drop another rocket in there and they shoot it, and it lands in front of the target, and they miss again. But they don't quit, they don't give in. But on that third shot, those people who shoot the mortars, they're as accurate as a sniper. They do their triangulation, they do their calculation, they throw the third rocket in there and it hits the target bang on the head. And as part of their preparation, they expect to miss the first two times. And in business, if we can take some of that philosophy into business and say, the first time I deploy the strategy, it's not going to work, then we can accept that. If we accept that it's not going to work on the second attempt, then it's easier to move on to that third attempt. And people just quit too soon. I have a philosophy in my business that I won't decide if a strategy is good or bad until I've used it at least 10 times. Because after the 10th time, I then have genuine knowledge. I have feedback from the real world what the problem is. Is it me who's pulling the trigger? Is it the trigger? Is it not calibrated correctly? Is there too much ammunition? I don't know what goes in the rocket, but is there something too much propulsion in there? But after the 10th time, you should be able to really dial it in and say, okay, this strategy works, or it generally doesn't. And instead of letting that ego and that fear slip in, you're using knowledge, and you can even eliminate a lot of that emotion. So instead of that fear getting in, go, I don't know what to do. You get rid of the fear and work on the numbers.
Absolutely.
You've taken a e-commerce company from $0 to $17 million in 8 months. And that's a phenomenal achievement. What elements did you have in place to be able to scale that quickly?
We had a team. The easiest way to put it is just we had a team. In order to scale that quickly, you need a product, you need a great offer, and you need the ability for a lot of people to find that and make a purchase, right? We were selling what I call trinkets and trash. It was housewares, it was things that people put in their cars, put on their mirrors, put in their bathrooms and things like that. And so it was a low price point, $20 to $50, give or take. And it was easy to sell these things because we were going direct to consumer, meaning we were going from the manufacturer directly to the consumer who was buying it all over the world. We had over 400,000 customers within 8 months, and we were scaling like gangbusters. We were running ads. I was in charge of operations and finance. That's what I was doing. We had a team that ran the ads. My job was to make sure that all of the technology was there so that we could get the ads running, so we could handle all the logistics of the shipping and things like that. But the manufacturer handled the shipping. We had a team that was managing all the creative and doing the design and doing the videos and actually monitoring all of the data that we were getting, because when you do that much, we were spending $150,000 a day on advertising, and we were getting a lot of data. So you have to manage that, and you have to have people that can do all that, and then you have to have that supervisory management structure in place so that you can keep tabs on it all. So that was really the key, is you have to have a good product, at least something that people want at a good price point, making it a good offer so that the value is greater than what they're paying for it. And then you have to have the ability to really get people in front of that, the right people, the people who want to find that. And so that's what we got really good at. And we just scaled it up rather quickly.
I'm sure a lot of people want that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, the 17 million. How many people shy away when they realise that now you've got to put 150,000 into marketing a day?
Well, that was the beautiful thing of what we were doing. We got really good at testing products and testing creative and figuring out if something was going to ROI or not. And we would get our money back the same day. Right? We got so good at what we were doing that we could actually make the money back. So you start off with a credit card with, say a $10,000, $20,000 limit, and you test, and you just have to assume that the first half to two-thirds of everything you do, you're going to throw it away. You're just going to throw it right down the tube. So that means we knew we were going to lose five to $10,000 before we ever figured something out. And that's a scary thing. That's going to be something that will hold almost everybody back from advertising if they don't understand advertising. So you know that $10,000 is going right down the tubes, but that's learning, that's data, that's information, that's figuring out what's going to work, what the tests are. And once we did that, the next 10,000 brought us back $20,000. And then we'd scale it up from there. So what we would do is we'd go from $50 a day on one ad to 500 to 5,000 to $50,000 within the course of a week for an ad, for a product, just testing audiences, testing creative, testing everything, right? Test as much as you possibly can. And so that's how we were able to do that. So yeah, people want the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, but you have to know all those little pieces and parts. And that's where we got really good, is the analytics of running the advertising. Because again, we knew the margins on the product. As long as we sold it and we acquired a customer for less than a certain amount, we knew we'd make money. But we had to test a lot to get there.
One of my frustrations when I first started running ads was no one prepared me for the journey. And nobody said, Daniel, you're going to have to invest $20,000 to $30,000 just to learn about the marketplace. I figured that out after a decade, and I will tell people today, if you want to run ads for your consulting business, you want to make sure you got $20,000 to $30,000 cash in bank that you're prepared to gamble just to learn. And you've got to be able to gamble it without losing any sleep over it, because you've got to go through that learning curve. But I see a lot of people getting excited. I'm gonna have a funnel, and a funnel's going to change the car that I drive, the house that I live in. I'm going to go from travelling economy to business to first class because I've got a funnel. The funnel's one part, but you've got to start to drive traffic through it. And that's where I see a lot of business people, they don't have the ticker. They've got to put the money in, and they've got to be prepared not to get a ROI, specifically in dollars, but the ROI has got to come back in terms of the knowledge of who's your perfect customer, what ads work. And I encourage that anybody who's going to run ads is make sure you get some good knowledge of that journey you're going to go through. And like you said here, that first 10 or 20 or 30,000 is just learning. But once you figure it out, it's then you can start to get it back. And I've seen the possibilities in my business. I went from having no leads to having 400 leads a week, to having 100 people show up to a webinar who I didn't even know who were starting to buy. And once you get to that stage, it's exciting, but it's also nerve-wracking as well.
It sure is, yep.
For the people who want to get to the end of the rainbow and get that pot of gold, what's the emotional journey that you went through as you scaled up to 17 million in 8 months?
Well, that was pure elation. That was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, the journey didn't continue. We had a lot of issues, and that business is no longer around. So that's a whole other story. But, I was going through a divorce at the time. I was dealing with, raising two boys part-time on my own. I'd moved out of my house, given away my house to my ex. And so I'm living in an apartment. And I remember every morning walking these kids up to the bus stop. And I'm checking on my phone. I'm checking the American Express account, making sure there's room to run the ads. I'm checking the Chase Bank account to make sure there's money. I'm making the payments. I'm getting on the phone, because when you're wiring $100,000, they need to confirm that you actually got that money in, right? So they do these calls with the banks. So it was just like, oh man, this is so cool. I'm on my phone at the bus stop with my kids, wiring the $100,000 from the bus stop. And by the time I get back to my office in the 5-minute walk that it takes me to get back to the apartment, I'll have made even more money. Like, this is so cool, right? I thought we'd made it. And we were doing amazing things as far as traveling. Like I had over 2 million miles on my American Express card. So I was traveling first class everywhere. I was staying in hotels for free. I was on a plane every weekend that I didn't have my kids, which was every other weekend. I was gone, right? I was traveling all over the country. We're doing masterminds, we're doing these events, I was speaking in places, everything was great. So that part was a lot of fun, right? When I woke up in the morning and we received a $500,000 wire that we weren't expecting coming back into our bank account, right? That's when things started to go south. And a lot of people will be like, well, you just got $500,000 wired to you. Why would you be upset? It's like, because I just wired $2 million to the manufacturer who needed to ship all these products, and all of a sudden they're sending me money back. Why are we sending money back? The next day it happened again, another 500,000 comes back. Like, what is going on? We find out from the manufacturer, going back to what we said earlier, we outsold our ability to produce. So we oversold our manufacturer's capability, which meant that we went from making almost $3 million in July of 2019 to being out of business in the end of August 2019. We had given 50,000 refunds. That was a journey I don't wish upon anyone, because you're talking to PayPal and Chase and American Express and all these people, and they're all threatening to sue you. And then you have chargebacks coming in like crazy. We had to hire 40 people full time just doing refunds, as much as we could do, as many refunds as we could offer, just to keep everybody from trying to sue us. Facebook shut down our business accounts. I literally lost my entire Facebook business manager over all of that, so I could never run an ad again on Facebook under my account. We had a number of problems that happened as a result of that, and the company went bankrupt because the manufacturer, not only could they not keep up with demand, but they started shipping empty boxes. So it took us several weeks to find out. It wasn't like, oh, hey guys, we can't do this anymore, stop selling. If that would have happened, we would have been fine. We kept selling for 6 weeks after that because he was shipping empty boxes, which made it look like everything was rolling off the line just fine, and we were going gangbusters. And then we found out those last 6 weeks worth of orders there was nothing in them. So that was pretty terrible.
It's phenomenal. We say there's 7 different forms of leverage, and 2 of the most important forms of leverage is learning from other people's success. And I believe that we should all find a mentor and learn what made them successful. But one of the best types of leverage is actually learning from other people's failure. Because if we can learn that from you, and you've got your business from 0 to 17 million in 8 months, and we all know that a part of failure is the supplier sending out empty boxes, then from day one of our business, we can start to make sure that we've got eyes on the boxes. And for people who have been in business, you know that you learn more from failure than you do from success. And I'm sure, Jeff, if you would have known what you now know when you were going through that, you would have been asking those questions, and you would have had those checkpoints in place well before the boxes even were shipped out being empty. And that's what
you got to trust your QA person. That's for sure. You got to make sure your QA person is on your team so that you can trust what they're telling you. That's for sure.
If you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently this time?
Oh, we had somebody whose job it was to inspect everything and make sure everything was getting shipped properly, but they were a referral. And so I would have said, no, we're going to have one of our guys go over there, and we're going to send them over to China, and they're going to be inspecting every little thing every single day and making sure, because that was the biggest failure for us, was the QA of the manufacturing. It's a silly mistake, and such a simple mistake too, really, but so dumb. And we knew we had to do this. We knew we had to fix that because we were actually going to open our own manufacturing plant and do all of this. And we were in the process of traveling over to China with our team. We had set up a travel and itinerary and everything. And that's when we found out we weren't going to be making that trip. So too little, too late.
We spoke before about these younger generation coming in, and they haven't had the life experiences. They haven't been through the failure yet. So they have that little bit of ignorance, and a lot of them are happy to go for broke. What's your take on people going for broke?
If you can stomach it, it's a hell of a ride. It's a lot of fun when you do that, right? But I will say, and this is the main reason a lot of the younger generation can do this, they don't have the same responsibilities. If you're married, if you have kids, if you have a mortgage, if you have mouths to feed, that makes it really scary to gamble away, right? And hope that it all works out. So you always want to make sure you have a fallback plan or 2, right? If it doesn't work in the first 6 months, can you survive 6 months without an income? And if you're going to be doing this as a side hustle, can you really commit the time to do it? Or better yet, can you outsource enough to get other people doing the things that you're not good at and you shouldn't be spending time on, right? If you're not a copywriter, don't write copy. If you're not a web developer, don't learn how to build a website. Right? If you're not a designer, please don't try to design your own website. It's terrible. Um, so I would say that that's absolutely the first place I would talk to somebody about is, what's at risk for you? Because if you're always worried about putting your family, putting your home, putting everything at risk, then you're not going to actually take the leap that is required of you to become a full-time entrepreneur, right? So that's it. That's the person who's going to be taking that leap and going into entrepreneurship. Now, if you talk about the person who's already an entrepreneur, already a business owner, who say, hey, we want to scale this thing to the moon, then you're going to have to ask similar questions, but they're going to be a little bit different, which is, can I build the infrastructure to support that scale? And then can I bring someone in who's going to help me with scaling this up? Because let's be honest, a small business owner, somebody who's comfortable doing $1 million to $5 million a year in revenue, doesn't have the same abilities necessarily or expertise to manage a team going from 5 million to 50 million, right? I worked in a company doing $55 billion in revenue. We had $260 billion under management. That's a whole bunch of $100 million operations happening. And those $100 million operations have a whole bunch of $10 million units, right? Divisions. And so your a way of doing business changes dramatically from small business owner to CEO of a mid cap to large cap company. It's a completely different skill set. And if you can't relinquish control of whatever it is that got you to where you are today, you'll never be able to scale. You've got to find a way to replace yourself and then step back and be the chairman, the CEO, or you have to say, no, I really like being the doctor, being the attorney, being the real estate broker. I like doing the thing and I'm comfortable. That's fine. Just realize that if you do want to make that leap, it's a completely different mindset.